what's been Barclays Africa's experience about doing business in Zambia?
Look, I mean, Barclays has been, in Zambia for nearly 100 years now, and across the continent in some places for over 150 years. That in itself says doing business in Zambia is very friendly, because we are investors in the country. So we're not even listed on the stock exchange. We are really real investors. So when you are investors in the country, I think there are a number of areas that we look at. Number one, the government policies that have been put in place have allowed us to be able to do business in a very friendly manner by attracting not only the local investors, but also the foreign investors. And some of the sectors that we focus on, include mining. And I was just looking at if I have to be forward-looking, the opportunities that we see in mining by the year 2020. We're expecting, development of, up to $15 billion. So that in itself just shows it's a very friendly place with a lot of, opportunities. I myself, ran, a bank there for about 5.5 years. So I'm speaking from a position of, I'm Zambian, so and I'm very proud, but I'm also working here at South Africa, and I'm also very proud. But I'm speaking from a position that the two countries are very interlinked. Sometimes when you are in Zambia, you would mistake that you are actually in some part of South Africa. And sometimes when you are in South Africa and you're walking somewhere, you'd actually think you are in Zambia because you have everybody speaking Bemba and Nyanja. So doing business for Barclays has been very good for us with a lot of opportunities. I think there are a lot of opportunities in a number of sectors.
If you travel the world, and one of the things that I learned quite quickly is that South Africa has a very sophisticated banking system and it's supported by the technology. And so we have certain expectations now about what's available to us when delivering banking. Will I get the same experience in Zambia?
Actually, in Zambia, you'll be surprised. We have 19 banks, and we have 19 real, big banks. And the type of service that the banks are actually providing is actually very advanced. A number of banks, including ours, if I speak for Barclays, we've really gone digital in a number of ways. And we are responding to the government agenda as well as what the public is looking for. We are looking at how do we access the unbanked by using the digital platform, by using the mobile platform. So while I'm not sure how advanced the mobile sector is here in South Africa, but in a place like Zambia, mobile money is really very advanced in trying to get the unbanked. The digital space, you go to an ATM, you are able to actually deposit money, and using intelligent ATMs, send money. So there are so many propositions that we have been able to look at. But I guess for us, what's really, really working, is the fact that both the government, the minister, the governor have been able to put that environment that allows us to continue to actually develop these propositions. So I guess it's doing business in Zambia. Are we open for business in the financial sector? Yes. Do we have challenges? Yes, we have challenges, but I guess the opportunities outweigh the challenges.
All right. Mr. Dlamini, let me turn to you. So a lot of people here might be thinking, I want to get into Zambia, I want to do business in Zambia. Massmart has walked the walk. You've done the steps, not just in Zambia, but other territories as well. And we've been hearing about the ease of doing business in Zambia, the ease of getting in there. What's been your experience as Massmart in terms of venturing into the country and being able to set up a business in the country?
Our experience as Massmart in Zambia has been actually remarkable. It's one of the most attractive places in which to do business, not just in Africa, but dare I say across the world. I also happen to be involved with a global pharmaceutical company that also operates in other emerging markets. And I'm not saying that because the minister is on my left-hand side. I'm saying that because for the 17 years that we've been in that country, we're not newcomers. We've really seen Zambia to be an attractive market to grow our business. We are also continuing to invest. Last year we opened our first builders warehouse store in Lusaka, and it's trading very exceptionally well actually. And we are looking at opening more stores in the next 2 to 3 years in Zambia. And what we find is that the institutions work. Back to the point that Mr. Mukoki was emphasizing about institutions, we find that they work. There is law and order, there's stability, and we also find that there are skills in Zambia. All our stores in Zambia, they are run and managed at all levels up to the top management team. They're run by Zambians. And more importantly as well as Masmat, wherever we go, we don't just want to bring stuff from South Africa into neighboring states or into African markets. If you go to our store in Lusaka, the game store, we've got 2 game stores there, one in Cosmopolitan, the other one in Manda Hill. 100% of the fresh food section that you find there is sourced from Zambian suppliers. And when we opened our builders warehouse store, I mean, already north of 10% of our supplies in that store last year was sourced from Zambian suppliers. So we don't see ourselves as just a trader bringing in the cheapest possible stuff you can get from anywhere in the world, including China. We see ourselves as being a major player in catalyzing local economic growth, local economic development, and in assisting in modernizing and deepening the development of local supply chains.
All right, okay, so that's the good bits. What about the other side of the equation? What are the challenges? What could Zambia do better to make it easier for you to do what you do? So we've heard the good bits, but there must be challenges. Otherwise, they'd be number 1 on the competitive index, the number 1 in terms of ease of doing business. How can they get from top 10 to number 1?
They're massive. I mean, as a retailer, one of the key things, to be honest with you, there's talk about customs, logistics, and all that. That's the usual talk in fora such as this one. I mean, our experience is that we can solve for those. I mean, we are long in the game of retail. I mean, one of the major challenges we face, not just in Zambia, is really getting real estate to develop our stores. If you ask me what is slowing our pace of growth in Zambia, it's really finding real estate, and that's one of the biggest challenges that we face.
Okay, we'll put that question to the minister just now, but Charles Kalima, so you've set up this Zambia-South Africa Business Council. So the question is, I'm Mr. Businessman there. How can you help me take this journey through your council?
All right. One of the things that we saw as a need to set up Zambia South Africa Business Council is that Zambia, like all the speakers have said, is open for investment, and we want to attract the best in the world to come set up industry in Zambia, resuscitate our manufacturing industry, assist us in developing our agricultural sector, our electricity infrastructure, and everywhere where business is required to be set up. Now, as a benefit of organizations becoming members of the Zambia South Africa Business Council is that, firstly, you have a one-stop shop where you get all the help that you need on who you should contact and what you need to do and what are the requirements for you to set up a viable business in the country. So we will direct you to the right people. I know that Zambia is a Christian nation, but we've got some wicked people there as well. So if you might go on your own and you find these crooks and they might do something that then you come back with a bad taste in your mouth thinking, oh no, and you cannot brush everybody with the same brush because most of us in Zambia are Christians. Because you saw the High Commissioner started this place in prayer, so that's a testament to that. But one of the major benefits you get from the Zambia South Africa Business Council as you become a member, and I know that membership forms are all over the tables, is that we'll direct you to the right people that will assist you in getting what you need. Obviously through the support of the Trade and Economics Office at the High Commission Office in Pretoria.
Is there, and it happens across the continent, I've seen several countries, whilst you might be able to form your company in a day, there's an element of bureaucracy that you need to overcome when you're applying for certain licenses and so on and so forth. Can you help with that process?
whichever process is required. We're not the agents to complete forms on your behalf, but we'll direct you to the entity or the business entity within Zambia that where you must go to complete those forms. They'll give you specific sets of requirements, specific forms that are required for you to complete. And once you comply to all that, the process is very smooth. So it's important for you to understand that we'll take every entity that becomes, or every investor that wants to open a branch within the country, we will assist them so that they knock on the right doors for them to be able to be assisted.
All right, okay. So, Minister, you've heard a few thoughts, mostly positive experiences, but I will pick up on what Mr. Dlamini says, and that's about real estate, the difficulty and the challenges that they have. They could be doing much more business if they could find this real estate. How are you dealing with that challenge?
Well, I wouldn't actually call it a challenge. That's an opportunity in which they can branch into or find somebody who can do that. But let me say this: the Zambian story has been quite an exciting one. You are all aware that Zambia is now about 52 years old. The first provision of infrastructure, which includes the real estate that Mr. Dlamini is complaining about, started in the first 10 years of independence under Dr. Kaunda. The government rolled out quite a lot of infrastructure. The private sector too participated in that, right up to about 1975, and then there was a dry spell from 1975 to about beginning of the 90s, when there was change of government. During this dry spell, we never saw, for instance, an increment in infrastructure in terms of provision of public goods such as roads, bridges, rail. It was nothing at all. And that denied Zambia's economy to grow and to become competitive. From about 1990, there was some massive restructuring of the economy, and Zambia went through the debt crisis, qualified under the HIPIC program, and from 1999 the economy started picking up, starting with a growth rate of about 2% per annum, and it peaked at about 7.5 in 2011. During this period, the government was now beginning slowly to try and roll out the infrastructure that would have also provided the real estate here. But the PF government came in with a very robust infrastructure rollout program. So from 2011, the government planned to roll out infrastructure to the tune of $20 billion US. And we are halfway through the mark in terms of providing that infrastructure. The private sector has complemented that by, coming up with the shopping malls, a lot of office space, hotels. They're coming up everywhere. The government also has a policy to create industrial zones, and in those industrial zones also people are putting up all sorts of infrastructure that you can use when you come and invest in Zambia. We've had a few challenges in terms of policy formulation. We've been accused that we've been very inconsistent in our policies, especially in the mining sector. But that must be seen against the background of trying to create some interface where there's beneficiation for the Zambian people. So our response to policy formulation is driven by what we observe business doing, for instance. There are times when we created some tax-free zones, and the business came in. They qualified for that tax-free benefit, but after 10 years, when they should start now paying taxes, they either close shop or simply change their identity and want to qualify to, for further taxes. So that, of course, attracts the policy change. and the same business community will turn around and accuse us of policy inconsistent when it is actually not. We mean well. For us to have qualified to be where we are in terms of competitiveness, it shows that we've been making the right moves to create that enabling environment for the business sector.
Business in Africa sometimes isn't the easiest place to do business, and often you're required to pay a facilitation fee. And I'm just wondering, have you been able to deal with corruption? Have you been able to deal with this scourge of this wheeling business with bribes and so on and so forth?
Well, yes. For us to create one-stop places such as the Zambia Development Agency, for instance, and also the changes that we've done to business registration through our entity called PACRA, those are efforts to try and reduce instances of corruption by making it very easy for people to establish their businesses. But you must understand that even when you eliminate all forms of channels through which corruption can take place, in an environment where there are few business opportunities for the locals and there are few jobs going around, people tend to be innovative, and some of them become innovative in the wrong way. So it's very, very difficult to completely eliminate corruption. But obviously, where we pick up challenges and we are able to, to investigate and look at the systems and change them, we don't take long to do so.
Practical experience as an investor in Zambia, I'm very happy to say during the 17 years that we've been in that country, and most recently as we expand our operations, we've never been asked to pay any facilitation fee or bribe. And it's again, it's an issue of a perception that is there, but the reality from my experience in Zambia and elsewhere in most African markets is that you are increasingly finding that governments are playing more of a fair game and not asking for corruption. And I think what remains is a stereotype. It's increasingly more of a stereotype than a reality. And I mean, companies such as Massmart, we are part of Walmart. There's just no way in which we can pay a bribe anywhere because it's just not worth it from a reputational point of view. And indeed, it's just counter to the policies that we have internally. Yeah.
Mrs. Melu, I'm wearing the hat of Mr. Businessman. I want to come and do business and set up a factory even in Zambia. Do I have to come with my money, or can I come and knock on your door in Zambia?
I just wanted to also confirm before I answer that, what my brother has said here, about Zambia, that I think one of the big advantages that the investors have is that there are no exchange controls. I think that point, the ambassador did talk about it during his address, and I think the minister, but I think that's a very big point. It's a very big point that we have to continually emphasize, because he can tell you that when he comes and does his business, one of the reasons why he chooses Zambia, not another country, is because when he now finishes and he wants to bring his money out, he can, and nobody's going to ask him the question. So I think that's a big advantage. But coming back to your question of what the banks are able to offer in terms of, speaking for my bank, Barclays, yes, an investor can come in. I think number one, if you have relationships with us in some part of the of Africa, that in itself allows us to be able to say, you know what, we don't have to get to know you again, because we already know you. We are part of one family, and we can do business with you, and we can be able to actually facilitate your transactions. I think the second point is, even if you are new, we haven't known you, and we have a case in point where we had a lot of farmers who came in from this part of the world. We call them Kushi farmers. Barclays is one of the leading banks in the agriculture sector, and we've been able to provide them with funding for them to actually grow that sector to a point where, when we meet with we met with the Minister of Finance not very long ago, And he also takes pride in the fact that, Barclays is doing such an excellent job in promoting agriculture. So whether you are an SME coming in, we'll look at you holistically. We'll look at you in terms of, yes, we get to know who you are, whether you are new or an investor, but we will help you with structuring your transactions in line with the opportunities that we see, be it mining, be it agriculture. And the minister was right on construction. Construction is one of the growing sectors in Zambia. Manufacturing is a growing sector in Zambia, and so is agriculture. So we have been focusing on mining a lot, and we'll continue to do that. But there are other growing sectors that we can speak to our investors and say, these are the areas that we would recommend that we work with you for us to help you grow your business.
Mr. Kalima, I'm just curious that the questions that you get asked the most when Mr. Businessman is trying to navigate his way into a new territory, Zambia, what are the issues that keep coming up for local businesses that they're worried about the most?
Yeah, during tea break, a couple of them did approach me as well, and one of the key questions that was being asked is that the comment that I made about us facilitating and assisting in pointing the business investors in the right direction to obtain work permits for their workers. I think that is one that comes up. But having said that, with the question from them, I also asked them the question that our requirement from you is that you will go in and not become, like the High Commissioner said, an investor, but an investor, so that there is benefit for the country as well. Because we, as the Zambia South Africa Business Council, would like to see large corporations invest in the community, in our university students, provide bursaries. When I was also in university, we had a lot of large corporations that provided bursaries for students who were studying, and the burden was removed from, at the time, the government paid for it, but now it is all individuals pay for it, or only a portion of them are paid for by government, depending on need. But it is important that private sector also gets into this scenario of supporting students at universities, sponsoring them for some specific qualifications. Also providing internship. A lot of our students get out of university without any form of experience in industry, and yet we've got large industries that are out there and they're not providing that type of internship that is required for our students. It is, and also the concept that in South Africa, a business is used to the fact that once you set up here, you are required to comply to BBBEE codes of good practice. Now, in Zambia, we don't have an exact equivalent in Zambia, but it is an appeal to the conscience of large business that when you go to Zambia as well, ensure that the elements of the code, the BBBEE code of good practice, are also implemented. How is your ownership structure? I'm glad to hear that Mazmat hires from the most senior manager to whoever into Zambian positions. It's important to do that. But what about the ownership of the companies that are incorporated in Zambia? Has the ownership been, do Zambians participate in the ownership of those companies? It's important that they participate. How much do you invest? What percentage of your profits do you invest to do enterprise development? It is a requirement in South Africa, but when you go to Zambia, you must also continue to implement things like that. So as much as they ask questions, how do you help me to set myself up? How do you assist me to get the work permits and things like that? My answer to them is we will, but we also expect you to do these things for the country.
All right, well, let's just follow up on that a little bit. A couple of quick-fire questions for you, Minister. The first one of the questions that comes up for South Africa is that our labor laws are quite onerous, and that can be quite off-putting for some investors because they're so used to different kinds of setups. How would you regard your labor laws? I'm going to ask Mr. Dlamini afterwards as well, but your thoughts. Is it something that I need to worry about as a businessman?
No, not at all. Our labor laws are quite friendly and accommodating. And I think if you're in the media, I'm sure you've noticed that we don't have the frequency of strikes that you see.
That we're enjoying.
Yeah, you don't see that kind of stuff. And like it has been stated here, the appeal is to the inner feelings of the investors, to just go beyond the desire for profit maximization, but also to try and one day look back and say, I stayed in this area, I got what I want, I'm a better off person, and I also left this area and its people better off. So we do appeal, to investors not to engage in activities such as casualization.
Yeah.
There was one investor from here, a food chain. Sorry, what do you call them?
Food retail.
Yes,
food
yes,
fast
in the
foods, yeah.
retail sector. I mean, their practices were quite bad, starting from abusing our liberalized monetary policies. They would actually be externalizing sales almost on a daily basis. And so the money that was being collected in Zambia was not even staying for reasonable time for the banking sector to turn it around. It would all go out. They were paying casual workers with the used oil. After making chips, after using it in the frying of chips, for some time they accumulate used oil, and that's what they would pay casual laborers as salaries. Or bread that has expired, that's what they would pay them. And we feel that business needs to have that human heart, to not to treat people the way you wouldn't be treated. Sometimes you understand where they come from. People strike on a daily basis. So for us, we would engage them, talk to them, and make sure that they...
All right, for the sake of time, I'm just going to rush through a couple of things. Intellectual property rights, things like that. Are we safe? If I come there and I register a logo, are we safe in Zambia?
Very, very safe. Zambia is not a country where the government just wakes up and grabs your property, not at all. In terms of land, you are entitled to 14 years and 99 years leases, and the government respects that. But just coming back to talk about the investing in Zambia, I think I must say, us in the sub-region, we are actually sleeping. We are sleeping. We are not taking advantage of opportunities that are there. Let me get back to the infrastructure sector. I mentioned earlier on that from 2011 to 2021, Zambia is going to roll out infrastructure to the tune of $20 billion. Now, if you ask yourself a question, where will this money end up? This money will actually end up in China, because 83% of the value of the contracts in Zambia are being undertaken by Chinese. And yet we have big South African companies here, such as Group 5, Basel Reeds, and everybody else, and they're not participating in the road sector there. It's all Chinese. So there's that aggression which is coming from China, like Alan Koki was saying, that for these other big economies to grow in Asia, they had to invest in the region. But for us, we have a situation where regional wealth is going away. We are bleeding wealth as a region. So we need to step back and say, how do we capture all the opportunities that are obtaining in our region? The banking sector too has quite a lot to do. I would encourage them to also take practices which are being done here in South Africa, where you can be funded on the strength of a business opportunity and the cash flows that will come out of it. Whereas in Zambia, you will mostly be funded on the back of the collateral that you can offer. And that collateral should be at least 4 times worth the amount of money they're giving you. So there are those challenges which the banking sector can also deal with. On our side, they need to talk to us on how we can assist in terms of helping them with their credit portfolio risk. I think that's what drives such practices.
All right. You know what, I'm pushed for time. So, but what we will do is we're going to look at the various sectors after lunch. So he's talked about infrastructure. We're going to actually have a discussion on those areas in particular after lunch in our next discussion. This perhaps was really just to kind of start the conversation going forward. So maybe just to wrap up this session, if I could just start, maybe let's start with you, Mr. Kalima. Your final thoughts. Doing business in Zambia, that's the kind of overarching theme. From your perspective, just share literally in a minute, final thoughts, nuggets that we can take away.
Doing business in Zambia is the best thing to do at this stage for every business investor who wants to expand and grow their business. I think that's my last thought that I will leave with you. And partner with us at the Zambia South Africa Business Council so that we can help facilitate your entry into Zambia and unblock any issues that you might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Dlamini.
What I can say from my side, the time for Zambia is now. It's a great place in which to invest. We are committed to stay invested. We want to do more, Honorable Minister. We look forward to partnering with you and your government to contribute to the growth and development of Zambia. Zambia continues to be investor friendly, and I think it's a shining example for other markets on the continent, and long may that be. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll give you the last word, Minister. So, Mrs. Melu.
So one of my former governors used to say, Zambia is a place where you cry when you come because you're homesick, and you cry when you leave because you don't want to leave. So the Zambians are very, very friendly people, and the environment is indeed open for business. I think there are so many opportunities. When you look at the intra-Africa trade, I think you did mention, the minister mentioned that point, the intra-Africa trade is very, very low. And when you look at the Zambia-South Africa trade, it's still also just one way. You know, so there's a lot that we need to do to promote. Well, as if you look at the Asia-Africa trade, it's actually much, much bigger. You know, there are so many Chinese doing business in Africa, while as within Africa, there's a lot that we need to do. So for me, I'm saying there's a lot more opportunities than challenges that we have. So it's indeed open for business right across the different sectors.
And Minister, final word.
Thank you very much. For us on our part as government, we are continuing with efforts to create that enabling environment. We did notice that one of the challenges which investors were faced with, especially in terms of setting up manufacturing in Zambia, was just the cost of producing a good or a service. When you look at China, the transportation cost component of producing a particular item sits at less than 10%, around 8%. And by the time it's brought to our borders, the cost component in terms of transportation is about 14%. In South Africa, it sits at about 23%. In Zambia, for a long time, it sat at 50%. And we're dealing with that by making sure that we roll out road infrastructure for you to be able to manufacture and transport your goods and whatever services to your final destination in a manner that will show that there is competitiveness in terms of pricing. We are also responding to challenges through policy formulation, and I must say that we are also adding premium to leadership. You realize that in the private sector, for her to rise to where she is, they had to count education, experience, exposure, and all of them had to be appropriate. Civil society also puts a premium to leadership. On the political side, you just need to be a clever illiterate and you can become anything. What we're doing in Zambia is that we're trying to give, attach premium to leadership. So we introduced minimum education level for you to be to qualify to be a member of parliament, for instance. And we have very, very good cabinet. 50% of which comprises graduates, meaning that even yourselves, when you complain about challenges, you have a cabinet that is able to understand what you are talking about and be able to respond positively. So we're doing quite a lot in all directions to make sure that we create that enabling environment for you to bring in your money, do business, and be able to take it out without any challenges. Thank you very much.